Today, I will tell you about the movie Lolita. Professor Humbert drives his car along a country road. His car swerves. Humbert's face is covered in blood. On the back seat lies a blood-stained gun, and in his hands, a hairpin. This hairpin belongs to the girl he fell madly in love with, the one who turned his life upside down. The roots of this forbidden love trace back to the professor's youth. At 14, Humbert fell in love with a girl, but she died, leaving a wound in his soul that never healed. Many years later, upon arriving in New England, he found a cure for his youthful suffering. The professor moved into the house of a widow, Charlotte Hayes, for two reasons. His original home had burned down, and Charlotte had a charming daughter, Lolita, or simply Lo. The moment he saw Lolita, Humbert was speechless. He had been about to reject Charlotte's offer to stay in her home, but then he noticed the young girl standing under the spray of a sprinkler. The long-forgotten love of his youth stirred within him once more. Humbert began keeping notes about Lolita and her mother in his notebook. He wrote openly, hiding nothing. Charlotte didn't attract him much, often irritating him with her shouting and arguments with her daughter. But little Lo filled him with delight. The girl sensed this and did everything she could to fuel his burning passion. However, he didn't realize that, for her, it was all just a game. The professor observed Lolita as she brushed her teeth, sneaked to the fridge at night for sweets, and played mischievously in the yard. He tried to spend as much time with her as possible, failing to notice that Charlotte had developed feelings for him. It was actually Lo who hinted at it, asking him to persuade Charlotte to take them to the lake. During the trip, Charlotte announced that Lolita would soon be leaving for summer camp and then a boarding school for girls. This news upset Humbert. However, Lolita's departure left him with a pleasant memory. Noticing his sorrowful expression, the girl ran into his bedroom, jumped on him, and kissed him passionately. After Lolita and her mother left, Humbert buried himself in the girl's clothes in her bedroom. That's where Charlotte's maid found him, handing him a letter from her mistress. In the letter, Charlotte asked Humbert to leave the house, as she had fallen desperately in love with him. He could only stay if he was willing to return her feelings. Humbert stayed. Soon after, he and Charlotte got married. He became the perfect husband, but avoided intimacy with his wife at all costs. He even experimented with sleeping pills to keep her unconscious, but only managed to knock her out for 4 hours. Eventually, Charlotte woke up and demanded he fulfill his marital duties. To prevent this from happening again, Humbert went to the doctor for a stronger sleeping pill, one that, as he put it, could knock out an elephant for 7 hours. Upon returning home, he found Charlotte in tears. She had opened his drawer and read his notes about herself and Lolita. Realizing the kind of monsters she had let into her home, she no longer wanted to see him. In despair, she wrote a letter to Lolita. While Humbert tried to calm her down, the phone rang. A stranger's voice informed him that his wife was dead. Charlotte had run out of the house to mail the letters and unexpectedly stepped onto the road. The driver didn't have time to brake. Humbert was shocked. He took her letters and burned them in the fireplace. Then he set off to the camp to get Lolita. On the way, he booked a hotel room for two. He told Lolita that her mother was sick. At the hotel, the girl met the famous playwright Claire Quilty. This older man showed an unhealthy interest in the lively Lolita. Humbert was informed that the room with 2 beds was unavailable, so he would have to share a bed with Lolita. The professor didn't object. They had dinner together, then returned to the room, where Humbert left the girl alone so she could freshen up before bed. He stepped out onto the terrace where Quilty struck up a conversation with him. Quilty was quite drunk and made crude insinuations about Humbert's relationship with Lolita. It was as if he could sense what the professor was thinking. When Humbert returned to the room, Lolita was already asleep. In the morning, Lo took the initiative. The girl made it clear that this wasn't her first time. On the way home, Lolita wanted to call her mother, forcing Humbert to tell her the truth. Little Lo cried all night after learning that her mother had died. But with no one else left in her life except Professor Humbert, she quickly forgave him for hiding Charlotte's death. Humbert took Lolita away from her hometown. They traveled across the country, staying in roadside motels and enjoying a carefree life. Lolita behaved like an ordinary child, while Humbert reveled in the chance that not everyone gets. However, this idyllic life didn't last forever. Humbert decided to enroll Lo in school, and at first everything went smoothly. But soon he began to suspect that she was hiding something from him. She started asking for more pocket money and, through manipulation, convinced him to let her participate in a school play. The author of the play was none other than Quilty, the man they had met at the hotel. Before long, Humbert discovered that Lolita had skipped several classes. When he confronted her, she came up with a convincing lie, which was backed up by her school friend. The professor grew suspicious that Lolita was planning to run away, so he began saving up her pocket money. They argued and Lo ran off. Humbert searched for her in the pouring rain for a long time before finally finding her in a cafe. Lolita was talking to someone on the phone. He took her home where she declared that she still wanted to leave, but this time she would choose the route. So they set off on another journey. Along the way, Humbert noticed that someone was following them. The stranger wasn't even trying to be discreet. At one of the gas stations, Humbert saw Lolita talking to a man. When he asked her about it, she calmly replied that the stranger was just asking for directions. They stopped at yet another motel. Humbert left to buy some fruit, and when he returned, he realized that Lolita had been gone for a while. Consumed by jealousy, he tried to find out who had captured her attention, but little Lo just laughed in response. She knew that the professor was completely under her control. Sometime later, Lolita fell ill, and Humbert had no choice but to take her to a hospital. He was sent home, and the next day, he was informed that she had recovered and had been picked up by her uncle. Humbert was furious. He stormed into the hospital and attacked the doctor, demanding to know who had taken Lolita. But when he noticed the police, he calmed himself and left. However, he had no intention of giving up. Humbert searched every hotel they had stayed in, flipping through guest books. Eventually, he noticed entries from a person with an unusual handwriting style who signed in under different names. He realized that this was the person who had taken Lolita. Years passed. Humbert returned to his old job. 3 years later, he received a letter from her. Lolita writes that she has gotten married and is expecting a child. She asked Daddy to send a few $100s so she and her husband can pay off their debts. At the end of the letter, she signs her name with her husband's last name. Humbert decides to go to Lolita. He practices shooting, preparing to take down the man who took his girl away. Lolita lives on the outskirts in a poor neighborhood. When the door opens, he sees a grown woman with a rounded belly. Humbert recognizes her as the same Lolita he was once madly in love with. He is still obsessed with her. She invites him inside. She explains that her husband believes Humbert is her father. Lolita confesses that she only ever loved Quilty, but he threw her out when she refused to star in his adult films. Humbert gives her $4,000 and tells her the money is hers no matter what. But he needs to know, does he have any chance that little Lo will come back to him? No chance at all, Lolita replies. As she talks about Quilty, she accidentally mentions where he lives. After saying goodbye, Humbert leaves. As he drives away from her house, he catches a fleeting glimpse of the pregnant woman as the Lolita he once knew. Humbert finds Quilty's house, goes upstairs, and sees the man dressed in nothing but a robe. Quilty is high on drugs and barely conscious. Humbert snaps him out of it by threatening him with a gun. He wants Quilty to understand exactly why he is about to be killed. When Quilty finally regains some clarity, he tries to grab the gun, but fails. Then he attempts to escape, but Humbert fires several shots. Terrified, Quilty crawls into his bed. That is where Humbert finishes him off. Covered in blood, Humbert gets into his car and drives away. On the road, the police stop him. He doesn't notice anyone around him. His thoughts are consumed by Lolita. He is arrested. In prison, he dies of a heart attack. A few weeks later, Lolita dies during childbirth.